suppose I need to sit up a little bit more instead of slouching.
We are recording.
All right, great. We'll get started with the manager's update.
I don't have a lot of financial stuff to report out on this week. I think I covered most of it last week, but still working closely with the Public Works to help manage all of the projects. Met with Christian Ridge. That project is coming along well. We still have some minor hiccups, but we're working through them. Met with Ann several times, just keeping me up to speed on everything that's going on financial-wise. And I've been harassing Larry daily, multiple times a day, to work on his motivation to make sure that we get this commitment done in a very timely fashion. We did meet, I had a kickoff meeting with Casella for the new software. And it was very brief. It was really just an introduction, but they are working with, well, we have a internal team for software committee, and so that team in IT is basically spearing up the kickoff, and they have most of the information they need. They're going to be sending us a whole bunch of forms, they said, which we haven't seen yet, but Nate's on vacation and he's kind of the driver as far as the IT portion of it goes. So it's progressing. We're getting into the implementation stage, so it's looking positive for our go live by the October date, which is what we need, October 1 for our Munis deadline. I talked to Jason after that meeting, because our actual Munis deadline is, I think he said, was the 10th, because we have to give them, what's that, like 90 days notice. So his intent is to give them notice that we won't be renewing with Munis. The gamble is we'll still have access to all of our information in Munis. The only thing is we won't have access to any sort of help. Or any sort of tickets or anything like that. So, not that they're tremendously helpful anyway, but if something should happen and we need to extend it with Munis a little bit longer, oh, there's Ron, that would have to happen without their assistance. So,
Morning, folks.
Morning, Ron.
Hey, Ron.
So, since he's on, you want to jump right into?
Yeah, let's just jump right in.
Okay. Yep. Ron, if you are ready, we'll turn it right over to you.
Sure. So they asked me all to join the call, tell you guys where your 22 audits at, 23 audits at, really, kind of some of the struggles that we've had. So I'll start with this. So the 22 audit will need to be completed no later than August 31st. We got all the extensions that we're going to get from the Department of Education. Moody's has reached out to try to get our information because they rate the bond bank. So August 31st, the 22 audit, everybody's going to be looking to it by August 31st. So I'll start with that. As far as some of the problems that we're experiencing, I would say the same problems that we experienced, except worse, in 22 that we saw in our first year in 21. Mapping of your cash receipts wasn't set up well. So those struggles, continued. Post to the pool cash account, then gets redistributed, and there's a tough time doing that. Credit cards and all the ACH payments coming into the city's bank accounts, there's struggles doing that. Cash receipt postings many times of the year got duplicated, so we've got to go in and find all the ghosts, and every time we seem to track down, what some of these ghosts are, some other ghosts rear their head. So those are probably the primary voided checks, that never got taken out of the system. I mean, a lot of it just really has to do with the way that you post and reconcile. And when you were in your transition period, for lack of a better way to say it, from 22 into 23, that the people, that there were no bodies in that chair reconciled. So we've been working with Ann and May literally for the past 6, 7 months now, just to try to, to get to help out with the books, to make sure everything is, is posted where it should be. And that's been the biggest struggle, you all, again this year, except magnified, it seems like more twice, this year than where we were last year. But we're at the end of the tunnel here now. There's still a lot of work to do. Still a lot of postings to be done. The city's in the transition now of moving to a new software, so that's kind of gonna, there's no need, as I've been telling Glenn and Ann and May, to throw money at your old software now. It can all be rectified with really, quite frankly, setting up and mapping a new chart of accounts really is where I go with that, so. And that's where we're at right now, you all.
So you say the end of August is a deadline. Is that guaranteed that it's going to be completed?
Yeah, I mean, that absolutely has to be guaranteed. I mean, we literally have put off, otherwise your DOE funding is going to start getting, withheld. So August 31st guaranteed. Yeah, it's an all hands on assault with Ann, May, Kathy, Sharman to really kind of get this all done. And then kind of simultaneously, the school's pretty well wrapped up. We've got our single audit team is wrapping up the audit for the federal funds, for the city. We've finally been able to move into that area because we feel confident that a lot of those ACHs have been posted now. So yeah, I would say with all the work that really has been hit hard, over the past 4, 5, and 6 months, that we're at the point where August 31st is the light at the end of the tunnel.
So Ron, would in 21, it wasn't anywhere near as bad? Because did we have anything in 21?
It was bad. Same problems. But for whatever reason in 22, we had some payroll liability mispostings to the point where the Internal Revenue Service showed up on your doorstep, and Ann had to, to really, kind of, drop what they were doing, to drop what she was doing to, to work on, getting those payroll matters taken care of. But in 22, really the big thing in 22 with the duplicate postings, those things that didn't get posted, you guys, 22 it was worse in 22 than it was in 21 is the best way I can say it.
So will you be able to start right on 23 then, so that we can, or
We actually started to work 23 backwards, because Kathy, in May and June, and that's why I'm saying that August 31st, we're now in May and June reconciliations right now, working with May to get all these adjustments posted. So we've actually been working, in July and August of 22 to make sure, that we've done that for fiscal year 23. And those seem to be where there's a lot of timing differences, you all. In the months of June and July, a lot of chaos, a lot of chaos during those times as you're trying to close your year. So.
I'm sorry. So what you're saying is you guys are, at the same time that you're reconciling, trying to get 22 audit done, you're taking care of June and July of this year to make sure
Correct.
that
23.
Correct. That way we can confirm that we're not bringing any bad information into the reconciliations for July and August of fiscal year 23.
Do we know what month the problem stopped? Were those, you just said it was at the end of the month. Or is the reconciliation, where did that get fixed? When did that stop becoming a problem? Or are we gonna?
it's still a problem.
It's still.
Oh, it still is?
Yes.
So it's gonna be.
Yeah, it's still a problem, and it would be like with going to your new software, making sure the mapping's set up. That's going to alleviate some of the problems. We've actually got a template that we Ann and May on to literally do these bank reconciliations that Kathy's been doing to kind of like dissect this pooled cash, to really kind of go into the old software and make all the changes. It just wouldn't be very efficient or cost effective, you all.
So Ron, when this is done, will we have a, like the 22, and I know now you're gonna have to go back and probably do the same thing with 23, because May just got here and Ann's only been here a few months. Are you, so that we're not doing this again next year for 23, because we haven't had anyone here to do the reconciling until just recently? Will we be able to start on 23 really quickly so that we're not?
We're ready to jump on 23 right now. And that was one of the questions that I saw in an email from the Department of Education. Just like, okay, you know, this is like three or 4 years in a row for the city. You know, when are we going to climb out of it? And I assured them that fiscal year 23 is that you guys are going to be compliant with all the regular, you know, the regulatory, the timelines, the deadlines, and all that. So there's this expectation, I think, from everybody. You know, that 23's got to be expedited here, because I virtually have said, you know, hey, listen, it is getting better. They are moving to a new software. Sadly, that's FY24, you know, but we've actually got the bodies and the chairs to work with this year, and that's really been a big help with May and Ann, so.
Do you mind if I keep asking all the questions? But, so Ron, will you be comfortable though when 22's done? We have a lot of financial questions and decisions that we need to make this coming year. Would it be your recommendation to wait until you're further into 23 audit before we start doing that?
Listen, here's what I'm sure of, whoever's asking these questions, and I just can't see because it's so small that I'm away from the video. Yeah, I would wait. I would expect sometime here, August 31st is our goal, is to sit in a room with you guys just like this. I am confident that the finances for Ellsworth are fine. It's more of you guys, the capital projects and funding what we need to fund over there. Making sure we got all good math, you know, really for that, because there's a lot of money out there. There's some debt issuances that came in, you know, with some timing differences that, you know, that really caused to a cash, you know, I won't say a cash crunch, but you know, definitely you know, the city using a lot of its cash, you know, so I really feel, you know, that we would just like August 31st, just to make sure we leave no doubt that we've got all the debt, all the debt's been drawn down and all the proper transfers have been made, you know, to the capital reserve funds.
So will that, I guess what I'm saying is, so will that include the capital funds that were spent in 23 when you're talking about?
Correct. Yeah, we're trying to come all the way up. We've actually developed a template. You guys had one, it just wasn't maintained, so we kind of carried on that torch, you know, with that template there. And we're coming all the way up to the February 23 just to make sure that nothing's misleading and timed out in 22 that happened in 23. We're coming right up through the end of fiscal year 23.
So just so that there's no question, because whenever there's late audits, it can be interpreted in many different ways, and I just want the public to have confidence around this. What we're talking about is the recording, proper recording of expenditures. It's not an issue of that we can't account for, you know, there's missing money and all of that.
There's no misappropriate. We don't see any misappropriations, and you know, transfers wouldn't make. We certainly wouldn't say that would rise to the level of a misappropriation. This is just nothing more than, you know, than struggles, system setup, errors. We're not seeing any symptoms like you know, like embezzlement, you know, misuse of funds or anything like that. This is just accounting. All we're seeing is accounting right now, you all.
Thank you.
We're also putting in place some additional bodies to, you know, like Amy's going to be helping you and stuff too. So,
I'm so
yeah,
excited.
I think, I'm sure you are very excited.
Who's Amy?
Atherton over from the school, they're going to let
The
her come over
CPA.
and help. Yeah.
And I know that Glenn's been very supportive of us, and May and Ann have been supportive with the whole process. They've been good to work with. Folks, it just is just drained all the time and effort, you know, to really get this one done and push this one across the finish line, just like you say, so we can give you 23 information, just so you guys know where you stand. And I can sit here and say your general fund's healthy, which I'm confident it is. I just want to make sure all the money's where it's supposed to be, folks, you know, and all those transfers happen based on the wishes of what you guys thought was going to happen. And that that your information and books as they present to you are what you think that they should be based on your actions of your business decisions.
What's that?
Good.
What's that?
August 31st, though, that's the drop dead date. Gotta have it done. And everybody, we got like 5 different people working on this thing right now. We can't miss that deadline, you guys. It won't be missed.
All right,
All right,
perfect.
thank you.
All right.
Ron, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, Glenn, any other further questions? And just let me know.
Okay, I'll do it.
Oh, we'll
Take
be in
care,
touch.
everybody.
Bye, Ron.
Thank you, Ron.
Thanks.
August 31st.
So can I quickly say something?
You can.
I just want to say, again, you've heard us say that, but I want to make sure you hear it too, is that I really appreciate everything that you've done in terms of the process to get everything on track. So all these questions have nothing to do with criticizing your work. Your work is absolutely terrific. So we appreciate it. Thank you for that. It's just, we obviously have that responsibility to make sure that we know what's going on and understand the process, but I just don't want you to think that you're being criticized, because you're doing a phenomenal job, and it's very much appreciated.
All right.
Great.
Now that that's through, I'll just wrap up my report real quick. 2 things I wanted to touch base on. One was I wanted to circle back around. I've polled or had multiple conversations and polled the management team, who's in turn spoke with their staff about the changing of operation hours for City Hall. What we've settled on is a Monday through Wednesday, same hours, 8 to 5. Thursday, 7:30 to 6:30, and then Friday, 8 to noon. So my question is, and I've talked to Dale in the past, and Dale, correct me if I'm wrong, but our previous conversation, you didn't believe that required a council action, that it was a manager's, a management decision to adjust the hours. So my question to you all is do you believe, is this something I should bring to council for like a council action, or just bring it to the council just to let the council know, and in turn the community? And
I don't think it needs a vote by the council. I think bringing it to the council in August, are you going to give the public a lot of notice before you implement it?
yes.
Okay.
So what is the reason, this is the first time I've heard of it, and maybe I missed something.
Oh, you
so-
must.
Oh, it was
may have
last
missed
week
it.
you talked about it.
Oh, after I left, or after I?
No, it was a few weeks ago I brought
Was
it
it a
up.
few weeks
okay.
Yeah,
I
and I
missed
brought it
that.
up in the past. So the main reason, well, 2 reasons. One is to extend our hours into the evening for 1 night a week, to allow, folks who work out of town, who work similar hours to City Hall, the opportunity to come in, beyond after 5 to get their, their work done in City Hall. And then the other, and really the true and main motivation is just staffing purposes. We've had a lot of, as you may remember, not a lot of work gets done Friday afternoons in this building, for a whole host of reasons. But, there's a work-life balance. We've had a lot of people, a lot of communities are going to 410s, and Friday's closed altogether. I felt that was a little bit maybe too extreme for us to go that route. So I think a half-day Friday kind of meets in the middle. It gives our staff kind of the work-life balance that they're looking for, with that extra time off, and again provides for the citizens who don't have the opportunity to come in here Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, that chance to come in after hours on that late night. And we kind of settled on Thursday as the late night, just because Fridays we get out early, so people will be putting in an 11-hour day on Thursday, but be getting out at noontime on Friday. So, and the other way we're going to compensate for the time missed is Monday through Wednesday, lunch breaks will be reduced down to a half an hour instead of an hour break. Thursday, there'll still be an hour-long break because of the extended day. And then Friday, of course, there'll be no lunch break at all because we'll be closing at noon. So, the staff feedback, there were some staff, a couple of staff that were, again, looking for, well, we'd rather be closed on Fridays type of conversation. And then, but outside of that, it was, the concept of a half a day Friday was very well received, and people really seemed to like the fact that they're gonna stay late one day, but in turn, they're gonna be able to start their weekend, 4 hours earlier than normal, so.
Do you have floating holidays?
One.
So, just to complicate your life, how do you, this is not for you to answer right now, I think you gotta think about it, but how do you give that time? So if somebody says, I wanna take Thursday off and use my floating holiday, is a floating holiday 8 hours? Is it a floating holiday the full day? And if it's a full day, then you're giving somebody more time than somebody who takes a floating holiday on an 8-hour shift. So it's just, those are some of those things to.
Yeah, so our time off requests are done by hours, not days. So if you put in for Thursday off and it's the 11-hour day, you'd be charged in your bank, you'd be charged for the full 11 hours of that day, of that. So if you took Friday off, you're only gonna lose 4 hours because our time is managed in Time Clock Plus, so it's in hours. So when you put in for that day off, if it's just a normal day, you get 8 hours taken out of your bank. If it were the 11-hour day, you'd get, well, it would be 10 because of the hour unpaid break, but you get 10 hours taken out of that bank.
So the floating holiday really is just given in terms of that floating holidays, you get 8 hours. It's not a.
Right,
So
yep.
you convert it on the front end.
Yeah.
So if you take Thursday, then you get 8 hours of your floating holiday, and then you take 3 hours of vacation type thing, or 2 hours of vacation.
Well, it's all PTO.
Oh, it's all the same?
Yeah. Yeah, but no, you're right. If it was, because floating holiday is separated out in time clock. So yeah, if you were taking your floating holiday on a Thursday, you'd have to use the floating holiday and then additional PTO time in order to.
To get that full day.
That will be an issue for, so you just on the front end thinking those things through so you can be really clear with everyone, this is what it means. So if you choose to take that Thursday,
Right.
understand that you're going, because you will hear it, and I just know that from personal.
Yeah.
The other thing is, if you want 2 of them, take Fridays.
Well,
Right?
That too
Yeah.
becomes an issue.
Do you have
so.
anybody that's on 37.5 hours a week anymore?
No.
I think we eliminated
Yeah,
most of
no,
those,
we're all,
okay.
we're all full-time.
Oh,
So.
yeah.
I mean, we have, I take that back, we do have some seasonal part-time people, but.
Yeah, no, I'm talking like your.
And they won't be impacted. This is for City Hall specific staff. Our outside areas all have different schedules already, so.
For like wastewater, are they still gonna be open from?
Yeah, wastewater will stay the same. They're only open till 4 at the treatment plant, so they'll stay the same. Water department, Reggie mentioned possibly, but his people are unionized, so that's something that will have to go through the union process. And then, of course, police and fire are already separate. Highway department, from from Memorial to Labor Day they work a 4-hour week.
What
So-
about the clerks union? Cause that's pretty much encompasses everybody in City Hall. So,
Yeah,
Ginny and-
there's actually only 5 of them now.
5, yeah.
But yeah, you're
So-
right, we will have to get a sidebar agreement with
Yeah.
them. So,
So this isn't gonna take effect until for quite a few months?
yeah, originally I was thinking September 1st, but it's probably gonna be October 1st. And we'll have signage all over the city hall, and then we'll also be setting out, posting on social media and the website, and, so we'll spend at least a solid 30, 60 days of notifying the public before we actually make the switch.
I like the 7:30 too, because you can zip in here before you go to work, if you.
Yeah, we talked about 7, but we have so many folks that live a pretty significant distance that it's
Yeah.
like, so there was some pushback on 7, but 7:30 seemed to be doable for everybody, and then that way we're not here till 7 at night by 6:30, and of course the clerks out front, by the time they wrap up their banks and do their, end of day and stuff, they get out a little bit later anyway, but.
Mark?
Are you gonna run afoul of any OT laws? Because Thursday's an 11-hour day.
No, because it's still a 40-hour week. Because of the short day on Friday.
They just have to have breaks.
Yeah.
Okay? I know they've changed lately, so.
And then, so I'll bring that I'll probably, rather than get it on the agenda, I'll just bring it up during my manager's report in the August meeting. And then the other issue I just wanted to just kind of throw on your radar, I reached out to the Hancock County, whatever he is, not the commissioner, but the
Oh, the administrator.
administrator, thank you. Less than positive, it was as everything has been with my experience with the county, it was a very frustrating and negative experience. But I reached out, my sole purpose for reaching out was just to find out what process I need to go through to get on the agenda. So after asking that question, he responded back, wanted to know more information about what I wanted to be on the agenda for. So I explained to him that I would be, and who I was representing. I said, well, I'm representing the city of Ellsworth. I'll be joined by the superintendent of schools, and our purpose is to bring a proposal forward for work to our track for potential ARPA funding from the county. I said the track is used by schools throughout the county, and as well as multiple different nonprofits that utilize it for fundraising. Fairly brief. Obviously, wasn't prepared to give him the full, rundown. So the response I got from him was that the information was helped him with the framework, that it would be considered, for the request would be considered. With that being said, I regret to inform you that the Hancock County Commissioner's position is that they are not going to consider or fund proposals for the use of ARPA funds from municipalities on an individual basis. The commissioners have indicated that they need to focus on county projects that will benefit the majority of the towns and unorganized territories in Hancock County. This position has been consistent and has already been relayed to other municipalities within Hancock County. So I don't even think he spoke to any of the commissioners about it. But so obviously, I don't intend to just take that as an answer. So I'm going to work. Amy's been on vacation this week, so I'm going to get with Amy and get her working. She may have already been working on the process of getting support letters from other superintendents, from other communities. We'll have to reach out to some of the organizations that utilize the track for fundraising purposes, get letters of support from them, and then Amy and I will just reach out to commissioners directly and just surpass this guy and his efforts to control whatever the commissioners apparently are gonna actually discuss. So once we have that supportive documentation, then we'll start reaching out. I'll probably reach out to Billy. I'll have her reach out to one of the other commissioners and just speak to them individually, and then circle back around and see if one of them can put us on their agenda, since my efforts, at least at the onset, are being shot down. So
Yeah, that's
Well, they're on a time crunch. The funds have to be allocated here fairly soon and then expended by 26. So I think it's January of 24. The allocation, but they're just sitting with that. So
yeah, it's just,
it's time to move it, and I think the approach in terms of getting other municipalities involved to make it clear that it's a bigger issue, that it affects more communities than just Ellsworth.
They don't look very much.
And then, it's one of those things that the public should be aware of. If they're just gonna continue to hold funds and not be responsive to at least entertaining conversations,
That's not okay.
yeah, I mean, again, I was a little bit perturbed when I received the email and kind of like, well, who the hell do you think you are? Like, I just thought it was completely ridiculous that he wouldn't even allow us to present to the, you know, the commissioners what the request is. Like, he doesn't even, I mean, for him to state that, you know, they won't even entertain a request from a municipality, well, that just seems absurd to me, because,
And the
We paid them a
municipalities
lot of
make
money.
up the Hancock County.
Right.
It's just like, that doesn't even make sense.
no.
They may deny the request.
Right,
But
and,
they entertaining
but they
it,
should at least,
They can't just prevent,
right, we should
we
at
can
least.
get on the agenda.
Yeah, we should at least be afforded the opportunity to come and present our case, so.
Absolutely, that's just ridiculous.
And my assumption is that the commissioners would,
You can present
would
from the floor.
support the presentation. I don't think that they may not agree with it, but I think they would entertain it. So
Right.
it's unfortunate that that's the case.
So, anyway, just an update that
That's okay.
we're gonna have to do a little bit, it's not gonna be as simple as just getting on the agenda, so. But I will work with Amy next week when she comes back from vacation and just get those other processes started, and then we'll take another bite at the apple and see if we can get on the agenda through the back door, so.
And I know Paul Perry,
Okay.
if you want me to talk to him, that's just ridiculous. Whoever heard it, and it's called, it's a public meeting. It's like,
Yeah, well,
whoever
and
heard of
that's-
denying someone being on an agenda.
And that's the other thing, I mean, you know, worst case scenario, if we get, you know, if I can't imagine we would, but if we got pushback from the commissioners, then I think Amy and I go to the meeting and they have public comment section. And they may cut us to 3 minutes, but we get up and we present
say a
during
lot
public
in 3
comment,
minutes.
comments, you know,
Yeah.
during the public comment session, and at least, to your point, Dale, at least through that process, we can get the, you know, request out to the public for them to understand that, you know, the commissioners are turning down or not even entertaining quality requests that, you know, that do impact a broader community outside of just Ellsworth.
Absolutely.
And I got the same less than warm welcome way back when this first started, when they were doing hazard duty pay for the sheriff's deputies. And I went and argued for them to give hazard duty pay to every first responder in the entire county, because we all serve Hancock County residents, whether we work for the city of Ellsworth or town of Bar Harbor or town of Gouldsboro. And got kind of the same pushback from them then was, well, you have your own money. Each, you know, municipalities have their own money. Well, we have 800,000, you have 10 million. Like, it's not even you can't even compare the two. But got the same pushback, and through persistence, I was able to get them to agree to a match where they matched what municipalities put forward up to, I think, $1,500 or whatever it was. So they did kind of come around to the concept of, if we had skin in the game, they would contribute. So my hope is that with this process, we can kind of come to that same sort of conclusion that, yes, we're going to put our ARPA funds in, and, you know, we're asking you to contribute some because of the value that it is for the whole county. So we'll see, and that's all I have.
Well, that was jolly.
Yeah, some good stuff.
All right, Ann.
All right.
It's up to you.
Who's ready?
Come on, Ann, bring it.
Okay, so I've done my usual amount of firefighting this week on various fronts, sales and use, just not even really worth talking about. But we got it worked out. The biggest push that I'm working on right now is obviously my combination of capital plan and long-term financial plan. And now I've taken on organization of all the files from Public Works, because there's a lot of financial complexity in those projects, and there's really not anyone else that can do it, and I'm also responsible for it, so I decided to take it over. And basically I'm putting together a central file for every single project that we have, and that will also work into my capital plan, where it's eventually gonna be a forward-facing, plan to the public so they can see what our projects are, how we're paying for it, what their investment is in it. So that's a big job. Been talking to Haley Ward and also Brent at Woodard and Curran to kind of they do a lot of the project management. So working with them to get all these files pulled together, all these projects, know where they are with the spending. we've got reporting coming up for MBRC. We're getting ready, we just committed to $8 million through that SRP.
That's all right.
SRF, yeah, so that's a clean water, so that's already in Jim Safian's court, he already is aware of it. So I got a call yesterday from DEP about the need for an environmental review, which is standard, but just to have everybody on the same page, so we all know what we're doing, between me and Glenn, and then Glenn works with the department heads for each of the different projects for whatever they do, but I'm taking the back end, the back office stuff, and making sure that the funding is straight up and that we know if we've allocated from a bond a certain amount of money that it got spent and that we can prove it.
Mhm.
So that's, in my mind, very important.
I would recommend, and it could be helpful for all the other things, but CDBG training, because they do go over all those like details types of things when you're doing CDBG funding,
Mhm.
but it will also help with other projects there. I felt that it was very informative.
Yeah, I just,
I agree.
I'm on my last training for Fed funds through EPA projects, that training. So I started that with Lisa and Jana, and so I have one more class to do.
Oh, okay, maybe that covers it all as well.
Well, I take every training there is, so,
Right.
because municipal, everything is really different from corporate and public companies. It's definitely different.
The CDBG side also it comes from the state, so it has their requirements for
Yeah.
that too, if you take that training.
Yeah.
It combines the two.
Yeah.
And Lisa agreed to give me some time now, in her new job, to get me up to speed on DOT rules, because I've been following DOT on my own to try to get a feel for it. And so she's offered to do that for me so that I know what I have to do with respect to reporting. The good thing is I'm reporting to her. So she's actually the person that receives
Yeah, that's helpful.
requests and reporting, so that's really helpful. We've also been working on the ambulance billing ordinance. That's gonna work out really well. I encouraged the guys, and they did, reach out to some of the cities around us that are running an ambulance successfully and get kind of some of their things they've done right and things they've done wrong, so that we can avoid the things they've done wrong category.
So-
Been working on.
Can I ask you a question
Yeah.
about that? So, when it comes to billing, there are kind of multiple layers to it, especially since you're gonna be getting into Medicare.
Yeah.
Are we talking about contracting with an outside firm?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, good.
Yeah,
There you
absolutely,
go.
no,
'Cause
we don't
that-
want that liability, and luckily, I just went through this with Gouldsboro, because Gouldsboro has their own ambulance now, and the previous fire chief then was the one that kind of brought that by himself, so we went through this kind of learning process together, not knowing really anything about it in Maine. I've done an ambulance business before, but much bigger scale, plenty of money, we have private funding for it, so, and it was in a county that was 85% insured. So it was a really good business, even though it was a nonprofit, it was very profitable.
So the billing, in terms of, that's one side of
Yeah.
it. The other side is gonna be kind of, well, for just kind of program, in terms of all the rules that need to be followed
Yeah.
to support the billing, because otherwise,
Yeah, everything has to be separate.
it becomes.
Separate bank account.
Yeah,
Separate
and it
everything.
becomes subject to audit, fraud, if it's not, if you don't have the documentation that's required for
No.
that particular design. There's a lot to it, so.
Oh, yeah.
uh,
Their licensing is still at the state, so they haven't even gotten licensed to transport yet, but.
We've set up the infrastructure to receive it, so when we get it, assuming that we get it, I'd say we're pretty much ready to go, and that money will be completely separate from all the money in the city, just because that's the safest way to do it.
And the company that they're looking at contracting with for billing just keeps a percentage. We don't pay them anything. They keep a percentage of the,
For the building.
of the bit, of the billing. So it's
There's
not.
no floor.
What's that?
There's no floor in terms of volume.
No, I don't believe, no.
It's pretty modest. I mean, it's not a really, you know, it's Maine. All the cities are kind of the same size and,
And where we're only gonna be a secondary transport,
yeah.
the expectation would be, you know, far less than if we were primary, because, you know, we don't intend to transport on every call we go to. The only ones we're gonna transport are the ones where Northern Light is just not responsive and not, you know, not available, so.
All right, I know you have to leave at 8, so let me tell you this part. Okay, so I met with Jim Safian and Joe Quatara about this Moody's drama. And basically, also, I met with Ron about it separately. And so, I think for the moment, they're willing to wait for the end of the month with respect to the financials. But there's not really anything I could do. They were kind of trying to be kind of heavy-handed and be like, well, you better hand it over, we're gonna lower your rating. I'm like, do what you gotta do. I can't give you something you don't have, and I'm not gonna ask the auditor to give you something that they're not comfortable to sign off on. So that's the situation. If you wanna stop rating us, and you know, and I did a little research on what's going on right now with bond ratings everywhere. Bond ratings are being suspended because of the same kind of problems. You know, banks are failing all around us. And so this problem is not anything new, and I'm well satisfied that the city doesn't have a financial competency or, you know, safety problem. We just have an accounting problem that we're fixing as quickly as we can. And that's pretty much what I told them. I offered them, you know, they want to make a big deal about this wastewater thing. I offered them the report from Woodard and Curran. Didn't seem terribly interested, so it was a non-starter argument, so I just went with my official word from the auditor. I gave that to Jim and Joe. Jim pretty much came to bat for us and said, this is what we can offer you. And that was where that was left.
I'm sure Joe probably would as well. So.
Yeah, so, I mean, I can't give him something that I don't have. The next thing was, like I told you before, we took down the new tan. My intention is not to use it, so I'm just being hateful about spending money right now and making Glenn be the heavy, because I really don't want to take down anything from that tan unless we absolutely have to. And I don't think that we do right now. As long as we get Larry going and get the commitment done and get the bills out, I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, because it takes a couple weeks at the printers too. Well, you've got to load it all in, and then you've got to send it off to be printed. And are we putting any flyers in the tax bill this year? We thought we had talked about some.
I don't think so.
I requested that.
You requested, yeah.
Yeah, I requested that. I'm requesting. I requested from Glenn because he's the middleman. We would like to have a notice put in there. I went to the tax collector when we started having so many issues with the audit and cash receipting about making sure that the clerks are putting a memo of the tax accounts onto the checks for reconciliation, because we're using 2 different softwares. So the data that comes over from Trio doesn't give us as much information. Once it's into Munis, it's very generic. It comes over in big lots. I got a lot of pushback that it was too much work and blah, 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 and I'm not accepting that. So I'm asking that a notice go in with the billing, asking citizens to put the account number on whatever form of payment they use, so that since we take a picture of all of those checks, we have something to audit against. Because that was a huge problem and took a lot of time to get through for audit this year, for 22. So hopefully we can work together to resolve this problem, because I don't want to spend this kind of money anymore getting audits done, because people just don't want to put notes in journal entries and don't want to do this and don't want to do that. We didn't do it that way before. Like, I don't want to hear it. Just do it.
I think isn't there something on the tax bill already that says, please include your account number?
I don't know. All I know is that it's not showing up on those checks, and I think there's plenty of time to do it. You know, I've done this job, I've accepted tax payments, and it can be done. It's not, you know, I'm not asking you to write a treatise or a paragraph about who's paying the bill. I'm asking you to put a 4 to 5 digit number on the payment method so that we can reconcile it during the audit. It's a normal audit trail thing that we should have, and since we apparently have to have 2 different softwares between the clerks and the rest of City Hall, I think it's a reasonable concession that they can make to make auditing easier for the auditing staff
I think
and
that's
for the accountant.
included when Mom was talking about ghost payments. I think that is
It's a big
one of the
one.
things that he's talking about, is the not applicating or applying, that's not a word, applying payment to the account, because we're not, with the transfer over to Trio and that process, there was some issues with the data. I mean, that's what happens in any sort of software transfer, but, so Sue's really working hard to clean that up.
I
But
think you can just recommend to the staff, say this is the process that we have to use now, so they're gonna have to do it, so. it's
Well,
just-
someone's
that's-
gonna tell them they have to do it because they don't wanna take it from finance, so that's a problem.
Who's the supervisor? Are you the supervisor of the tax collector? And
Yeah, she's a department head now, you know. So Sue McLean, she works under me, so. Yeah.
I think,
I'm confident it's not gonna be a problem.
Yeah, well, we're gonna make it work one way or the other,
Yeah.
because it has to happen.
Right,
We can't have this problem.
what about, notifying everybody in the tax bill that the hours have changed too? You can just do a little third of a
go.
sheet.
Yeah, yep,
That
That's
might
a
be a
good
way, and
idea.
it's pretty cheap
yep.
way to notify people.
It's a good idea, yeah.
And any other information you wanna get out there is always, we always try to do that, so.
I think doing what you're doing in terms of identifying the processes that can be used throughout the city to address the accounting challenges is.
They're
it's a-
simple and cheap.
They're all connected, so it's a
They're
matter of just
yeah.
changing procedures and trying to get away from paper. When you have an electronic system, you wanna be able to use the system so you can go in at any point and just look at it, know the details. And when you click on something
Yeah.
and nothing's filled out, it's just, and we wouldn't run into that now. It just takes a second, and once people get used to it, it's not
Yeah.
a big deal, it's just that change is always a process.
Challenge.
Yeah.
But I think people get behind it eventually, once they understand it and can support it.
Yeah, I think the understanding is the most important part, you know, there's always been, seems to have been some sort of like weird separation about who's responsible for what, and everybody's responsible for what. That's the thing, it's a whole workflow, it's a whole process that begins from the minute that the mail gets here until the minute that we close the books for a period. It's not anybody picking on anybody, it's just, let's make this work easily so that we don't have these kind of problems and we're not running into the clerk's office 20 times during audit trying to figure out why they did something because they didn't put any notes. You know, the whole concept of an audit trail is very simple.
Yeah.
You know, it really is, and people use it in their regular lives every day. How many times do you write notes to yourself? So you remember something later? I do all the time. I put Post-it notes up in my house to myself, because you're not gonna remember everything.
I live and die by lists.
Yeah, so you know what I'm saying here, it's not a ridiculous or unreasonable request.
Well, it gets some efficiency too, because then, you know, where you've been spending a lot of time on the audit, eventually, when you don't have to, then you can start focusing on other important areas, finding different
Yeah.
types of funding that can support the city and lower
Exactly.
tax bills, all of that, so.
It benefits everyone.
It's efficiency. Can I ask about the wastewater?
You can ask
The
anything
risk?
you'd like, sir. You're the mayor.
So. Oh, yeah. Ceremonial, remember the word ceremonial. Just on the wastewater, because you mentioned that's been an area, obviously, that's been just, because it's so confusing, there's a lot of interpretation about what is happening there. And that's been fueled in a lot of different ways. Even last year, when Ron was going through the audit, he's talking about it from one perspective that leads to thinking in a different way. We need to get that synthesized so that the public can understand it and everyone can understand it a little bit better, because the reality is that we're not sitting with $6 million of debt that we don't have funded. It's paid for. Is it paid for by some taxes and rates? Probably. But that's the issue to sort through, to be able to put out to the public. Because left where it is now, it just has become this contentious issue that we just need to move beyond, based on facts, not just based on personal opinion.
Well, that's the perfect point of all of it, is that really, I feel like just looking at the raw numbers of wastewater and the septage service, I think it's fine. I think there was a lot of things that were contributing to the problems that we had with the accounting for wastewater. One was out-of-date capital asset records, no reconciliation for WasteWorks, which thank God Tammy's doing that right now, and Portalogics. So it's just a matter of, I don't think there's probably been reliable numbers that anybody should have hung their hat on for some time. So I'm gonna wait till there are, and then I'm gonna make the case. And I'm gonna explain it and make pie charts and, put it in a way that everybody can understand,
Thank you.
not just accountants.
Yeah, because it's funny because it wasn't an issue before. Moody's, there was a complete understanding of how that whole financing worked, and, Moody's rated, I'm pretty sure they came and did a visitation. Joe had them come and do a visitation of Ellsworth, and they completely understood the project, I'm just wondering why that suddenly changed with Moody's, if they're so
They
hung
changed
up.
their rules, that's why.
Yeah, they did last year,
Oh.
which is why, so it's odd that Moody's is being
Yeah.
this way towards, because we just went through a complete process with them where they actually did drop us a point
Yeah.
because of the wastewater, and we had a probably 2-hour-long session with them with Jim Safian,
And we had
and
Charmin.
Ron was there.
And they didn't understand what she was telling them. It's very clear that they didn't understand the accounting piece. And the people that were on the call are very young, like all the people I've been dealing with, they're like 20-somethings. And so, what do you do with that? I don't even know what you do with that. You just have to keep moving
Yeah.
forward, and
It's
we
just-
have a good rating with S&P, so.
Yeah, and we explained to them that we
Maybe we
were,
don't
that we were addressing it, that we were raising rate, we had raised rates, we were doing the septage, because they were looking at that $3 million deficit. They weren't looking at the current, numbers from today, they were looking at that deficit, and, which is fueled partially by the depreciation,
Yeah.
and they're wanting to know what we're doing about it, and we're like, well, these are the steps that we're taking, and they were still just,
Yeah. And we pulled a lot of the
Ignored it.
depreciation is now out of there, because they were still carrying depreciation on the books for buildings that were raised years ago.
Equipment we don't have anymore.
Equipment we don't have anymore, vehicles we don't have anymore, so we really did an overhaul of capital assets because it just needed to be done, and it should reflect well on the city's overall financial health. And then the next piece of pulling together the records and the record keeping and the transparency and the processes of public works, I think is gonna be huge. I think the people of the city are gonna feel a lot better when they know what they've got, what we're doing to take care of it, and what it means for them, and what it's really costing them. So I've been doing a lot of research on best practices of budgeting and capital planning all over this country, and seeing who are the cities that stand out and why. And so I'm hoping that you'll see that when we come to next budget season, that we'll have something like that not only gives the taxpayers a good feeling about what we do, but also why we do it, and, you know, how it's in their best interest, and how we're not just, you know, I just saw a survey that like 68% of the population of this country doesn't trust the government. We don't want that. I don't want that. You know, we don't want people to feel like we're doing something that's untoward or not in their best interest. So that's really my goal right now, is to try to get the financials fixed so that we're transparent there, and then show them, here's what you're getting, here's what we're doing. And I think that'll do a lot to build goodwill and some equity for the leadership of the city.
I know, I appreciate that, because it's like I said, as a counselor, I'm making decisions, financial decisions for the city, and it's really hard to do it when you
Yeah.
don't have a clue on whether or not your numbers are right. You know, you just feel like you're,
And
I
it's
wouldn't
hard.
do it in my own home, I'm definitely not gonna do it with city tax dollars, so.
And it's hard when you know a lot about these things to communicate it to people that don't.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big push from finance, is gonna be that sort of fluency, that understanding of what these fiscal subjects are about. Like, what does this mean to you?
Yeah.
You know, what is this costing you every day or every month, for real? You know, it's really incredible when you see that kind of drill down in that real granular look at where tax dollars go. It really makes a difference to people to understand it. You know, you're getting a library for $1 a day. It's not a big deal when you look at it that way. But when you look at it like $500,000, everybody's apoplectic, you know, so. That's my goal as finance director.
Well, thank you.
And give everyone a puppy.
Give everyone a puppy.
Do that one. Rescue puppy.
Rescue puppy, yes, absolutely. All right.
All set?
Anything else? All
Stop
set?
the recording.
All right.
Yeah, 'cause I get about half hour, I gotta go.
Yeah. Get that in here.
Thanks for coming in and sleeping.
I'm here at 7:15.
I know, I'm really proud of you.